Again, welcome. Sorry, go ahead. Our opening words today are by Arlen Goff. Thresholds, we cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside, and back again. From here to there, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age. Each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation. From what we were and what we are to what we can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to the other, to the sacred, to the holy, into an awareness of new life pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of our beloved community? Come, let us worship together. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing together, Gather in Spirit, hymn number 347 in your gray hymnals, and as shown on the screen. The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. And I forgot to ring. The bell sound is my signal. The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Each Sunday when we gather, we bring this symbol to life together. Its flame illuminates this moment, calling our attention to the path of hope and justice. Please join me in speaking the words in your order of service and on the screens as we light the chalice, the symbol of our faith. Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to learn what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. We now move into a time of centering, using the chalice flame to light our candles of compassion. As we gather today on this Sunday after Election Day, we light a candle in recognition of the hopes and heartbreaks inherent in our democracy. We rededicate ourselves to the work of justice in our towns and nation. We light a candle for Ukraine to show our support for peace in their region. Working for a more harmonious, just, and merciful world requires an active commitment to the fullness of life for our neighbors around the world, no matter where they are. We know, too, that the details of our daily lives are sacred and important. We now light a candle for all the simple joys that are sustaining us, and we light another candle in honor of the sorrows and hardships we might be carrying. From Naomi, thank you for the many texts. From Bev, we have thinking of Nita and Larry as they go through COVID. We light one more candle in honor of the joys and sorrows we carry in our hearts that have not been spoken aloud. With these candles of compassion illuminating this moment, I invite you to take a few unhurried breaths, to relax your shoulders and soften your gaze, or close your eyes as we enter into a time of shared silence. We offer these words for prayer and contemplation from Vern Barnett. Infinite Spirit, sometimes called Grandfather, Grandmother, Father Sky, Earth Mother, Creator, we gather to praise your creation, to honor the swimmers and the crawlers, the four-leggeds and the winged ones. We give thanks for the beauty and glory of creation and open our hearts to new ways to understand our place in the universe, not the center or focus, but a humble and balanced place, where every step we take becomes a prayer, where every word we say makes harmony with the vast, vibrating cosmos, and where we know we are singing the song of life. We pray to know more deeply that we are in the garden where every plant and animal and speck of dust is a living prayer. Without our brothers and sisters of the plant and animal and mineral kingdoms, the human family would end. So we want to bless them as they bless us. We pray for humility, not to humble ourselves before presidents or priests, but before the ants and trees. For if we cannot be in true relation to the ant, we shall be outcasts of the garden. Let us cast the pollution from our eyes so we can see the glory and live with thanksgiving. Great Spirit, let us remember it is not how we talk, but how we walk. When we say we love animals, let us protect them. When we say that we love the plant people, let us honor them by living lightly on the earth. When we say we love the minerals, let us use them only in necessity. And remember their rightful places. Oil belongs in the ground, not in the air through our wasteful machines. Wondrous trees bringing life into the atmosphere, your gifts of fire and shelter, fruit and sailing are precious to us. And in many ways you offer us leaves of knowledge. May the vision of mutual interrelatedness, cosmic interdependence, the seamless process of generations not end in cough-filled skies blotting the sun, but rather make clear air, healthy forests, wholesome water, expansive prairie, and pungent earth nourish paths for all creatures through mountain and valley and the salt sea and through a protective atmosphere as we rejoice in the inhabitants. Hear and empower our mantra: reduce, reuse, recycle. With thanks for the surprise and mystery of it all, we pray in the name of the Creator, the processes and presences, and all our relations. May it be so. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing together, "The Earth is Our Mother," hymn number 1073, in your teal hymnals and as shown on the screens. This month, our Share the Plate recipient is Veterans for Peace. We selected this organization to honor Veterans Day this month, as well as the work they do. Today, we had planned to welcome over Zoom Mike McDonald from Veterans for Peace to tell us about his organization. Mike is unable to join us today, so I will read his statement. Mike McDonald has been a member of Unity Church Unitarian and a member of Veterans for Peace for about 10 years. He believes the two really go together well. They both promote peace at home and abroad. They work both for social justice for all people, our earth, and all life on it. One of the end statements at Unity is to create a brave space for racial healing and dismantling dominant culture. Veterans for Peace aspires to do the same. Roger Santo Domingo of UU World tells us the time is now for environmental justice. Americans need to accept the fact that we are less than 5% of the world's population, yet are responsible for 25% of the accumulated carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Groups such as Unitarian Universalists and Veterans for Peace must keep proclaiming our mission to shed a light on injustices everywhere in regards to the climate crisis. Mike describes himself as a peace activist. It is his wish to keep working towards that goal the rest of his days. His memberships, both as a UU and Veteran for Peace member, complement each other very well. He sees himself as very fortunate to have discovered both groups at about the same time. He asked to share a short poem from UU Magazine. It's called "The Earth, You Are My Body" by Sandra Fees. O Earth, for your lush body broken, for your living waters sullied, for your sheltering trees scorched, for your wild creatures pursued. For you, in my distress, I call out. I long for the breath of the wind and the dance of the sea to move what seems immovable, to break us free from this silence that hangs in the air. Aching for a song of repair to liberate this land, I call out, you, Earth, are my body. This planet a sanctuary, this land a garden. In my distress, who will listen? Who will refuse to be silent? Who will lament with me? Who will lift their voices in sacred song and call out with me in distress to heal your earthly paradise? Mike concluded his remarks with this simple, heartfelt statement. Peace to you all, and thank you for your contributions. We'll now take our morning offering. As we have just said, this month's Share the Plate recipient is Veterans for Peace. As Mike's statement just explained, Veterans for Peace is a global organization for military veterans and allies whose collective efforts are to bring a culture of peace by using their experiences and lifting their voices. They inform the public of the true causes of war and the enormous costs of wars, with our obligation to heal the wounds of war. You may contribute by putting cash or a check made out to UUFN with offering basket on the memo line in the basket. Or you may contribute by getting out your phone and going to our website, uunorthfield.org, clicking on the yellow donate button on the right-hand column, and then selecting Share the Plate. As always, thank you for giving as you are able.
There we go. Am I coming through? Okay, great. I had the pleasure of meeting Rebecca Otto for the first time in July of 2019. She and her husband, Sean, attended an Independent Artists Week on Mallard Island. And that particular week, I was the lead caretaker. Just briefly, quickly, I would say that when folks come on board to the island, we do a short orientation because we are a small granite island in the middle of Rainy Lake, and we have to be really mindful of our impact on a small granite, mostly granite island, 1,000 feet long, 75 feet wide at the most. So we try very hard to walk our talk and live as sustainably as possible. So my job as a caretaker is to orient the new guests each week to those systems. One is carrying our own water, one is taking out our compost into a composting area, one is recycling all of the things that we bring on the island and are taking off as well at the end of the week. So Rebecca really endeared herself to me out of that group that particular week because, you know, you say what you want to say about the systems and the fact that we're living in community that week, and then everybody carries on, and that's fine. And people pick up. You try to role model what to do, so forth. However, Rebecca, at the end of that meal, she got up and she said, "Okay, now I'll take the compost out, and Sean's going to go haul some water. Where's that?" And I'm like, on it. I love this woman already. So anyways, she demonstrated immediately in our little group of 12 such a great attitude, and her enthusiasm and community mindedness continues, in my estimation, to this day. Little did I know that Mallard was we were going to obviously first be confronted with COVID-19. We had to shut down our programming in 2020. Our beloved, executive director of 13 years at that point decided that she would step back and bring in new leadership. And by golly, by December of 2020, Rebecca Otto was our executive director. So it is with great enthusiasm. So this is the executive director of a small foundation on a small island and a big mission. And her first thing is to be confronted with COVID. Then the first year that we kind of step out of that a little bit is in 2021. And she was confronted by severe drought conditions up in the northern part of Minnesota, and our little island was, of course, very vulnerable. And then in 2022, thinking we're past the worst of COVID-19 and we can start to come out of our shell a bit, we are confronted with historic flooding on this little island. So in very short order, I feel as though I've gotten to know Rebecca Otto, the executive director of the Oberholzer Foundation, very quickly and under very challenging conditions. And I would just wholeheartedly welcome her to our podium today and let you hear a little bit more about why this organization has been so special to so many people. Rebecca Otto.
Well, good morning. So nice to see all of you. And I feel very honored to be invited here this morning to spend a little bit of time with you as you're gathered. I am Rebecca Otto, the executive director of what we call the Ernest C. Oberholzer Foundation. And so I wanted to, and thank you, Mary, for inviting me. And Mary is not just a caretaker, she's actually a summer program director. I'm outing you. So, And she's such a good steward of this really special, unique living museum. Our islands and buildings are on the National Historic Register. And you're probably saying to yourself, so who's this Ernest Oberholzer guy? Because his name is in our foundation name. Here's what I would love to do with you briefly this morning. I don't have a lot of time, and I don't want to talk too fast, which is one of my habits. I wanted to introduce you and give you some highlights of what I think are really important moments in who we call Ober. His nickname was Ober. So pivotal points in his life that I think informed who he was as a person. And so I'm going to take you on a little trip, set you in the time frame that he started his life, and then take you on the journey that he went through. And then today, where we kind of celebrate his life and some of the things that he did. One thing that I think is really important is Ober gathered people together. He brought community together. And so I think it's why it's so appropriate that we're here today sharing this with you, because we all really believe in the importance of connection and community. So Ober was born in 1884. Okay, that's the time frame, in Iowa. And by the age of 6, his parents divorced. By the age of 7, his only brother died from a fall. So those are pretty significant events in his small life. So he and his mother moved in with the grandparents. The next really big moment in his life was at age 17, he suffered from rheumatic fever. And at that time, the doctors said, you know what, your life really may be shortened. So he's in a place where he's 17. You think you know everything, but you don't, right? And his life may be shortened because of rheumatic fever. And so he drops out of high school. But at age 19, in 1903, he was admitted conditionally to Harvard. So I'm just painting a picture for you. This guy was very eclectic, very interesting, and it gets better. So he got in on a conditional basis to Harvard. And at age 22, a really big moment for Ober was he went on a life-changing canoe trip in the Border Lakes region north of Ely. And this had a big impact on Ober, and it had a big impact on us today. So that was at 22, he took his first big canoe trip. At the age of 25, we can all think back to about where we were at the age of 25. Ober began his 3,000-mile summer of paddling. So he started in May, and he went all the way through October. So obviously he was completely hooked on that part of the country and on paddling and wilderness and all that it brought. So remember, he was told his life might be shortened, at the age of 17, and now at 25, he's doing some pretty rigorous outdoorsing, I'll call it. He was accompanied and assisted by Ojibwe guides, but there was one in particular who was in his late 40s, and his name, as they called him, was Billy McGee. Okay, so Billy McGee was a trapper and guide, and he was the one that helped Ober the most with paddling, because he wasn't an expert paddler. He was learning, and you can learn your whole life. And through Ober's interactions with wildlife and wilderness and all that physicalness brought to his life, he completely fell in love with that area. Okay, we're going to go 3 years later, age 28. Ober and Billy embarked on an epic canoe journey that was a 2,000-mile trip. And many people who know the waters that they went through and the trip that they took, they should not have come out alive, but they did. And there were a couple things I brought today, and you might not be able to see it, but there's a book that was published called Bound for the Barrens. And this is actually Ober's diary, his day-to-day journaling on that trip. And it's a really important read. Some of it's very light, we saw some ducks and we caught some fish, but there is a point at which they almost did die. So that's available. So they became legends of their time. And I know some friends that have been up in that area, and she read Bound for the Barrens, and she said, holy smokes, how did he make it out of there? And they do lots of outdoors activities. So now I'm going to fast forward from age 28 to age 38. You heard Mary talking about Mallard Island. Well, that is when Ober acquires Mallard Island. I'm not telling you all the detail about how he acquired it and how that happened. Ober never really had much. He actually lived a very, very simple and humble life. He never owned a car. People gave him rides when he needed a ride. So he acquires Mallard Island and Rainy Lake, and he made his home there. And he welcomed all kinds of people. He welcomed artists, politicians, financiers, lots of different people. But he also invited and welcomed the Rainy Lake Anishinaabe. So he had this relationship with Billy McGee, and he continued to build relationships, and they were very, very important to him. Not only did they help him on canoeing and sometimes work on the island, but they were also, he really fell in love with the culture. Now, when Ober brought people together, he'd play his violin, they'd play music. His mother, Rosa, would play piano. Now, the buildings we have on the island are these little old cabins. They're not insulated. They're very simple, primitive buildings, but people certainly had a whole lot of fun while they were there. Ober collected over 12,000 books. There's a massive library in these old cabins, and he collected all kinds of different books. So obviously he was really intellectually curious. So in 1925, at the age of 41, so Ober's living in this place, loving this place, and knows it very intimately. Ober and other conservationists learn about a plan proposed by a major industrialist of the time, Edward Backus. That guy was prolific, and he was all about jobs, jobs, jobs. They actually, that's what it actually was. And people appreciated him because he started getting that area developed way up by International Falls. But Backus was also a Harvard grad, but he wanted to dam up much of the northern waters. He wanted to create 4 giant storage basins in that lovely, lovely wilderness area. So he wanted to build a series of 7 dams, and it was 4 main water storage areas in the Rainy Lake watershed. The affected areas would include parts of the Superior National Forest and what are now known as Voyageurs National Park, Quetico Provincial Park, and the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. So it was all in the name of industry and jobs, and it would have completely transformed the area. And frankly, it would have displaced a whole bunch of Rainy Lake Anishinaabe people who lived in the area, who lived off of the land and the wild ricing. So he knew it was going to be devastating to them. So when Ober was confronted by what he considered an assault on the ecology and beauty of a wilderness that he knew intimately and loved deeply, and he decided he had to do something. So and I don't have a picture of him, but he was very short in stature. He wasn't necessarily a big ego kind of guy. He wasn't see me. He was more, he just fit in. But he was asked to lead this effort to try to protect this lovely, lovely, special, beautiful wilderness area for the future and protect it from industry. And so over a 5-year period, finally in 1930, after a lot of persistence, patience, and engaging his Harvard network. So Ober lived very simply, not like a typical Harvard grad, very simply, very humbly, but he knew how to use his Harvard network to make good things happen, and that's what he did. Through money, through strategy, through flights, whatever was required, organizing. He was able to get the Shipstead-Nolan Act passed at the federal level in 1930 at the age of 41. It was the first statute in U.S. history where Congress expressly ordered the land to be protected as wilderness. Now, we have several Indigenous board members for our foundation, and I just want to point out that although we called it wilderness in our laws, there were people there before we were there, right? There were Indigenous people that were living there and thriving there. And so, but this was the only mechanism for Ober to work to protect this very special place. And so he did, for everybody. So that's Ober in a nutshell, his life path, and to me, some of the remarkable things that happened in his life. He wasn't a perfect human being, but he did some pretty cool things. And because of his efforts, we today have the Boundary Waters Canoe Area, where people come from around the world to go for peace, for healing, for all kinds of things. We all go there for different reasons, but it's really a life-changing place. So Ober loved bringing people together on Mallard Island and make them feel welcome. And it was a safe place to share ideas, to engage in conversation and storytelling. as Ober welcomed the Anishinaabe to Mallard Island, he worked to learn their language. He worked to learn their cultural teachings and practices. And eventually they say that they initiated him as a medicine man, which would be a very big honor. And so he was very close. Now in 1965, I want to just take a pause. I was alive then. I was fairly small, but some of you remember kind of the state of the world in 1965. Ober was 81 years old, and he set up a very modest trust. And I wanted to share with you a little bit of the language in the trust. He said the main purpose of this trust is to help bridge the gap, both economic and cultural, between Aboriginal Indians of the continent and white inhabitants of the present day, and it is hoped to their mutual advantage. So Ober kind of saw some of the things that had happened to these different communities and how a lot had been taken, and he really wanted to rebuild them in their communities and provide opportunity. Ober was also very concerned about our use of natural resources. And another paragraph in his trust was, furthermore, whatever contributes towards solving the great problem of the American Indian and of the waste of his human gifts and of his wilderness endowment is pertinent to this trust and worthy of scrutiny for remedies based on wiser policies. The wasteful and unseemly conflict, both in human values and in the use of primitive natural resources, is worldwide. Tolerance, understanding, recognition that all races, out of their special genius and experience, have something to give for the common good were never more needed. So back in 1965, when Ober was 81, he recognized that we needed to do a better job as a society to come together and to care for each other and to recognize our gifts. Well, here's the amazing thing. Remember, Ober he was sick at the age of 17. He lived into his 90s. So he led a life rich in both people and wilderness. So we exist today as a foundation, the Oberholzer Foundation. I'm just shortening it up, the Ober Foundation. We continue to bring people together on Mallard Island to share ideas, to do storytelling, to think through some of life's challenges, to heal. I went there because I was transitioning out of public service and into something I just didn't know. And I went looking for answers when I was there. My husband was going to writing a book that he was working on. It's getting close to being published. But, I needed time and space to think. And sometimes it's just a great place to do that too. Now, here's something that we're unique with. Remember Billy McGee? So he was a really important part of Ober's life. And Indigenous cultural teachings and practices continue to be really important to our foundation. So we infuse we have structured program weeks that we offer every summer, and we infuse those with cultural teachings and practices through our elder in residence, Paybom, who is the great grandson of Billy McGee. Is that cool? Yeah. And so we're actually super unique in that he's very generous in sharing. He, provides drum ceremony. He tells us stories. He teaches us the language. He taught at the U of M for 25 years and taught Ojibwe. We have a sweat lodge. We have a traditional teaching lodge, which he uses for programming. So only he gets to use those facilities. He brings us in, he teaches us. We also have Grandmother Drum, who lives in Ober's house and watches over the islands. Many Indigenous people say that there's a very strong spiritual presence on Mallard Island, and they like to come to interact. And also, we still welcome Rainy Lake Anishinaabe and other Indigenous people to Mallard, as Ober did, including for drum ceremonies, for program weeks, for deepening their cultural practices, and for reflection. A lot of Indigenous people lost their cultural teachings and practices. And the younger generation wants to relearn them because they kind of went away for a variety of reasons. And so our island has been a safe place for them to come and re-engage in that, which has been very healing for people. I have had guests share their reflections on the value of being able to experience the cultural teachings and practices, and it's changed many people's lives for the good. So we know that we're doing something really special on Mallard Island. So I want to close with something today. We have lots of wonderful volunteers who put on time on Mallard Island, but we have one that puts a lot of hours in to help maintain our buildings. And they shared the following. When asked recently by a coworker why he would spend so much time and energy at a place he didn't own, he replied, "You would never ask a person a question like that about their church, and that's what this place is to many of us." So I have a few images to share now with you that I think might show up on a screen somewhere. Am I right?
One on your right and one on your left at the audience.
Okay, good. And that not showing up here. Are they showing up anywhere else? Darn it. I sent them to Jen. Let's see. Oh, we're going to be patient. Yay. Okay. So just to give you a sense, I've got some photos back on a table back there, but to give you a sense of this place that we're talking about, this is a photo of the big house. You can see the books. There's books everywhere. We have books from the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. They're pretty extraordinary. So that's actually in Ober's house. And we can go to the next one. He had these really eclectic buildings built. This was called Birdhouse. And it's a building that probably shouldn't have been built. It's tall and skinny. And all these buildings are very playful and interactive. And it's actually held up with guy wires to keep it from tipping over. It's pretty dang cool. And tamarack poles. Yeah, it's really cool. So that's Birdhouse. Okay, next. This really describes Ober right here. So there's a birch bark canoe hanging from the ceiling of what we kind of called the book house or the library. This got flooded during our flood this summer. We had to move almost 4,000 books in very short order as the water was rising very quickly in bankers' boxes and try to get them safely to higher ground. They're not going to go back in there now. We're going to let that go back to being a boathouse because it is on the water and we don't want to put those books at risk. However, it's kind of cool, isn't it? Next. And this is one view of Big House. This was Ober's house. And so Ober's house also includes the drum room where Grandmother Drum lives. And that's where I have a lot of gatherings. Okay, next. And this is just a beautiful image. These are all John Ratzlaff photographs. I actually have a small number of, you can just take them if you want. They're little postcard books with some of his photos, some of these photos. And this is a picture he took one day on Mallard of some people that were there, some guests most likely. I don't know them by name, but I thought it was a beautiful picture just to kind of capture the reflection and healing sometimes that happens for people in this special place. And is that it? Yes, that's it. And on the back table, there's actually a photo of Ober in his later years. There's brochures. So there's a website. And if you want to see a photo of Billy McGee, he's on our website. And so that is our story about Mallard Island and the foundation. And I hope that perhaps you found a little bit of inspiration in a very humble individual who I found inspiration in, somebody who was eclectic, who didn't have a big ego, but made a huge impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, for this most interesting presentation of a really valuable resource and a much appreciated foundation. Those of us that have been in the north, in the boundary waters, on a canoe, treasure that memory as an experience that is so unique and difficult to find in this modern age of ours where everything is controlled by thermostats and electronics and fossil fuels, and hopefully changing. So thank you. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing together the blessings of the earth and sky. Hymn number 308 in the gray hymnals and as shown on the screens. Our closing words are adapted from those by Kimberly Ann Tomzak Carlson. May we recognize the beauty around us and within us. May we savor the beauty of our abundance and diversity, always cherishing one another and our earth. May we remember to inhale the lushness in life, knowing that we are a people of beauty. As we prepare for our closing hymn, you may place your hands over your heart, reach out to hold the hands of the people next to you, or whatever is comfortable for you. Let us join together in singing our final hymn, Spirit of Life, the words shown on the screens. Please join me as we extinguish our chalice as printed in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace. Thank you so much. That was delightful. I've heard so much about the place from I've never gotten there, but we love that. Absolutely. It's probably not too, yes, it's not too early to see about especially serving and stuff. Right. Everybody has a like I see water train. It's a place to figure out how you Oh, I thought, you know, when we were up there, sometimes we had like 20 people.
I see.
Okay. You know, we would send the kids out there in the community to get water from the lake. At that time,
I know. Different community.
yeah, and they would bring water in their skills.
And do their own project.
I grew up.
Sounds great.
I'm a nurse, so I
Yes.
grew up in South
Okay, so I'll get the card.
but they did.
Right, yeah, right there. Okay, okay.
This is a lesson they will never forget.
Make sure, yeah. Okay, okay, so we don't have to do anything else. That's great. To really, you know, you need ad nauseum. No, not that way. But it's just I really